They were childhood friends that fell hard for each other.
He just swept her off her feet and she fell in love with him.
A devoted mother and a military man with 3 beautiful children.
They seem to be living a typical American dream lifestyle.
But just when it seemed their happy lives were complete, a brutal murder rips their world apart.
But something had to have gone horribly wrong for this scenario to emerge.
As detectives dig into the investigation, they discover a sinister plot.
The allegations that were being made floored me, that somebody would do something like that.
When we found out who it was just shocking.
The web of lies so tangled, it leaves everyone wondering if they'll ever know the truth.
And there were just all of these layers to this.
Now we're trying to figure out, okay, how does all this come together?
Nothing was adding up.
Everything just kept pulling us in more and more. What's really going on here?
Monday, October 26, 2009. All is quiet in Logan Square, a charming neighborhood on Chicago's North Side. But that evening, 911 receives a call from this peaceful pocket of the Windy City.
This is 911. You need police or fire?
I'm not sure.
The caller identifies himself as Darren Brewer, and he's concerned about his 22-year-old wife, Kenyatte. Darren says she disappeared late Sunday night.
Did you try to contact her by phone?
Yes, me, her mom, dad, and sister been calling her all day and texting, and no response.
Darren hasn't heard from Kenyatte, but he tells the 911 operator that he's found something that could help police track her down.
And as we're driving, we see my car in the alley.
Okay, one that she drives all the time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What type of vehicle is it?
It's a 2001 Chevy.
Okay, we're going to send the police. Belden and Kildare, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
As police head to Logan Square to check things out, Darren waits for word about his beloved wife. But no one could imagine just how dark and twisted this troubling case was about to get. Kenyatte Collier Brewer was a born and bred Chicago girl. The oldest of 3 siblings, she always stood out in a crowd, even at a young age.
Kenyatte, she just had a great heart. She loved to smile. She just loved to have fun. Kenyatte was a very bright student, inquisitive growing up. She was very outgoing.
But Kenyatte wasn't just smart. She was blessed with brains and beauty.
Oh yeah, all the boys liked her. She was not a big flirt, but everyone told her how pretty she was.
And with every good-looking young man in her neighborhood trying their best to get with her, Kenyatte sometimes found it hard to hold out for Mr. Right. By the time she was 18, she was pregnant with her first child.
I remember when she first had her first son, how happy she was and excited she was. And she just wanted to be a really good mother.
The second she began having children, she became very serious about it. Going back to school, studying nursing, graduating with honors.
After graduating, Kenyatte began working as a nurse's assistant and had high hopes of making a career out of doing something she loved.
She just loved helping people. She loved working with the elderly.
By 2006, everything was coming together for this bright young woman. But she also wanted the right man by her side.
Kenyatte?
Darren, hi.
Hey.
Turns out, he had been hiding in plain sight.
Actually knew Darren Brewer from early in her childhood.
And when their paths crossed again in adulthood, the chemistry was undeniable.
They had known each other for such a long time. There was that belief that they were meant to be together.
I'm definitely gonna call you.
He just swept her off her feet and she fell in love with him.
Like Kenyatte, fellow Chicago native Darren Brewer was smart and ambitious.
He had a pretty big personality. He seemed to be an intelligent person.
He was making a name for himself. He had a nice job at the Illinois National Guard.
It didn't take long for Kenyatte to realize she wanted to spend her life with Darren.
It was kind of a whirlwind romance by all accounts. Some people fall in love, in a few months and they get married and they live happily ever after. And
Her and Darren were very young and they got married. She just wanted to really complete her life.
Before long, that life included 2 more kids of their own. Both at the young age of 22, Kenyatte and Darren seemed to have it all.
She had married the man of her dreams, man in uniform, that was helping her with her first son, and they had 2 other beautiful children. She also had a good job. She was continuing her education, so she felt that she was living out her dreams.
Which makes it all the more surprising when Kenyatte goes missing one Sunday night in October of 2009. Early the next morning, Darren reaches out to friends and family for help.
Hello? Have you heard from Kenyatte?
No, I haven't talked to her today.
When we made contact with Darren, he said that they had a normal evening. Kenyatte came in from work, put the kids down. He was tired, was going to bed.
And she went out with a couple of friends.
He sent her a text message asking her to bring back milk. He got no response. He went to sleep, woke up, and she still wasn't home.
We started to panic, so we felt that it was time for the authorities to get involved.
8 hours into Kenyatte's disappearance, Darren contacts police.
I'd like to report a missing person.
But is told he'd have to wait a few more hours before he can file a missing persons report.
Police often tell people to wait 24 hours to report someone missing to make sure they actually are missing. It could be a false alarm.
Left with few options, Darren holds out hope that his wife would soon turn up. But that evening, after picking up their kids from daycare, Darren spots something chilling along his drive home.
He discovers his wife's vehicle parked unattended in an alley. That's when he makes a 911 call.
With 3 small children in the car, Darren decides it's best not to stop and examine his wife's car. Instead, he drives the short distance home and waits for law enforcement to search the vehicle.
When the police first arrived at the car, there was nothing unusual. There was no damage to the car, and there was no one inside.
Unlocked.
The doors were unlocked. They searched the inside of the vehicle, and they didn't find anything.
But moments later, everything changes.
One of the officers pressed the trunk release button. The other officer at the rear of the vehicle at that time made a gruesome discovery.
There was a woman's body stuffed inside. She was wearing a nurse's uniform. She had blood covering her head. She was clearly deceased.
She still had her name tag on, so they knew it was Darren's wife, Kenyatte Brewer.
So now, at this point, the missing persons case has turned into a homicide.
Why would someone kill this popular, attractive young woman who seemingly had everything going for her? Just didn't make sense.
What investigators don't realize is that Kenyatte's mysterious death is about to open a Pandora's box of deception and greed, the horrific likes of which no one will ever forget.
Everyone has been shocked, hoping that it was still not true.
Devoted couple Darren Brewer and Kenyatte Collier Brewer had promising careers, a loving marriage, and a happy home with 3 adorable children.
They seem to be living the typical American dream lifestyle. He was a nice-looking fellow employed with the Illinois National Guard in service to his country, and she was a nurse's assistant.
But all that changed on October 26, 2009. After having gone missing, Kenyatte is found dead in the trunk of her own car in the northwest side of Chicago.
Kenyatte is church-going, loving mother and wife, not the person that you would expect to end up in this situation.
How does a lady like her end up in the back of a trunk?
At the crime scene, detectives try to find some answers to this mystery.
What we got?
Investigators were called to the scene. They were trying to figure out what happened, what was going on.
They're looking at the body, and it's obvious that Kenyatte has been shot in the head. Her body is then removed to confirm her cause of death and hopefully to find some evidence that can be linked back to the killer.
Unfortunately, the scene provides few clues as to how Kenyatte ended up there.
You're looking for a shell casing from the bullet. You're looking for a gun. You're looking for a shoe, a glove. Anything that would give you an idea of who the suspect was?
Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Nothing seemed out of place. There were no clues as to say what happened, what led up to this.
Without hard evidence, detectives must consider all possibilities.
Was it a robbery gone bad? Was it a simple carjacking? Did the crime happen here? Or was her body dumped here?
Robberies and carjackings are crimes of opportunity, and the people that perpetrate those crimes, generally they select likely victims. She would have probably been an appealing target with a nurse's uniform, small build, 5'2", 130 pounds. That had to be considered.
But as police know, a deadly robbery would be highly unusual in the quiet Logan Square neighborhood.
Carjackings, robberies, things of that nature in that particular area don't happen with any high frequency at all. Crime scene tape in this neighborhood was a big deal. A canvass was conducted. That's standard, you know, did anybody see anything, hear anything?
While CSIs continue to process the scene, detectives are left with the grim task of informing Kenyte's husband, Darren, of his wife's death.
We've identified the body of your deceased wife.
You can't imagine that someone would hurt her. Not his caring wife, not the woman that everyone loved. He just can't imagine that someone would want to hurt her like this.
We are sorry for your loss.
Detectives have no reason to suspect Darren had anything to do with his wife's death. But maybe Darren can help them track down the killer.
Did your wife have any enemies?
Was there previous history of violence? Did she have a criminal background? Did she live a high-risk lifestyle?
Darren is positive Kenyte wasn't involved in any illegal activity. But he then says something startling.
There was this one incident last year.
Approximately a year earlier, Kenyte was exiting the residence along with her husband, Darren. She actually sustained a gunshot while she was 6 months pregnant. And in fact, her husband had also sustained a less serious injury as well.
Anything ever developed from that?
No, sir.
Was there anything else that's ever happened?
A few weeks before her murder, she was cut in the face with a bottle. Someone threw a bottle at her while she was in the car.
They were sitting at a stoplight, and all of a sudden, here comes this bottle flying through the window and cut her face.
Initially, it seemed the attacks on Kenyte were random and unrelated. But now, detectives wonder if they are somehow connected to our murder.
Give us a call if there's anything else you can think of.
Detectives obviously had to take them into consideration if there was some type of a ongoing threat to her person.
If someone has been attacked and then turns up dead, it seems as though this may not be a random act of violence. Detectives have to ask themselves then if someone is out to get her.
It seems impossible that this devoted mother and nurse's assistant could have any enemies whatsoever. But detectives are about to learn that a shocking secret may have sparked a vicious act of retribution.
The lies and jealousy and the betrayal was unreal.
"22-year-olds Darren Brewer and Kenyte Collier Brewer and their 3 kids had a picture-perfect life together. But that fairy tale was shattered when Kenyte was found shot dead in the trunk of her own car.
This young woman who was bursting with energy was gone, and now there's this void. In one fell swoop, the mother's gone, and now these children are motherless.
The family was grieving, but then also there's her husband, Darren. He's grieving. He's lost his wife, the mother of his kids.
They were reeling, just totally reeling, trying to make sense of all of it.
Meanwhile, detectives are trying to figure out if Kenyte had been specifically targeted. Darren tells them she had been the victim of 2 violent crimes over the past year.
It starts to look like someone is actually out to hurt her, that she's not just a random victim.
The second attack on Kenyte left severe cuts to her face. The detectives have to ask then, could this be more personal?
Investigators need to learn more about their victim, so they go to her family. Like husband Darren, they're still overwhelmed by Kenyte's death.
Our worst nightmare had come true.
She worked hard. She didn't do any drugs. She took care of her family. She did a lot of family-oriented activities.
When she left work, did someone follow her? Did the car break down? Our minds was just racing and just really could not come to grips with still who could have done this to her.
With the family at a loss for an explanation, and with police finding no suspects in the first two attacks, the investigation seems to have hit a dead end. That is, until police ask about Kenyete and Darren's relationship.
They had a good relationship. Darren was very good with the kids.
Darren Brewer looked like a family man. He was in the military. He expected to be deployed out to Afghanistan.
But all was not well in paradise.
When you say appeared to be the perfect couple, could you elaborate?
The family has learned that Darren has been keeping a deep, dark secret.
He was having an affair.
He's got another lover.
With whom?
It was a man.
Darren had been in the closet and in denial about his sexual orientation, but it got to the point where he just couldn't deny it anymore. Darren was gay and was having an affair.
It was still somewhat shocking to some of the family members and maybe to Kenyete as well that the affair he was having was in fact with a man.
But apparently, Darren had no intention of leaving his wife.
He has this polished image. I have a wife, I have kids that I love. So no one can find out about this. No one can find out how he's been living a double life.
He had a military career at risk. He had this, at least on paper, little family unit that he was trying to maintain for appearances.
According to Kenyate's family, even after she discovered Darren's secret life, the couple continued to live together. But Kenyete became increasingly unhappy while Darren sought comfort in the arms of his male lover.
Once you start hearing those details, all it just leaves you with more and more questions. And everything just kept pulling us in more and more. Like, what's really going on here?
The family is now wondering if this has something to do with Kenyate's death.
In speaking to Kenyate's family, detectives learned the man Darren has been seeing is named Joseph Matthews.
When detectives determine that someone is having an affair, it raises all sorts of questions.
That's a pretty big moment, because now you've got what you think is some sort of motive.
If Darren doesn't want to get a divorce because he doesn't want to put his career at risk, that could have caused problems for Darren's boyfriend. Detectives have to consider whether Darren's boyfriend wanted to end the marriage at any cost.
There's only one way to find out. Detectives must find Darren's boyfriend.
He's become involved in this now, whether he wants to be or not.
On the evening of October 26, 2009, police track down Joseph Matthews and bring him in for questioning.
Have a seat here.
Detectives immediately confront him about his relationship with Darren.
How long have you known each other?
I've known him since May.
Were you intimate?
Yes, we were.
Joseph is forthcoming about his relationship with Darren, and when the conversation turns to Kenyete, Joseph makes a startling admission.
I knew they had kids, but Darren never told me he was married.
Not only does Joseph deny harboring any ill will towards Kenyete, he seems genuinely upset about her death. Still, detectives are curious about his whereabouts on the night of October 25th. According to Joseph, while he admits that he saw Darren earlier that evening, he was at home, in bed, at the time of the crime.
Anyone see you?
Yeah, my roommates.
You have a number we can call?
Yeah.
Detectives speak to Joseph's roommates and ultimately verify his alibi. At that point, they have no choice but to cut him loose. With their primary suspect all but eliminated, police can't help but wonder, if Joseph didn't kill Kenyete, then who did? Before detectives can consider their next move, they get a surprising new lead.
Darren comes to the police with a bombshell.
What can you tell us, Darren?
I know who killed my wife.
Who?
It was my brother.
He named his brother Dewan as being the gunman who actually shot and killed Kenyete.
Police are stunned. Darren has just identified his wife's killer. But why would Darren's brother Dewan want to kill Kenyete? According to Darren, Kenyate came to him a few weeks earlier with a disturbing allegation.
Kenyate tells her husband that in fact his brother came over and forcibly raped her.
Darren confronted his brother, but his brother said that it was not a rape.
He said it was consensual.
She was not that type of a person. She loved her husband, she loved her kids. So I find it very hard to believe that she consented to have sex with him, period.
According to Darren, if the sex wasn't consensual, then Dewan had ample motive to murder Kenyate.
Darren thinks that he may have killed Kenyate to keep her quiet.
It's a stunning accusation, but police are curious why Darren waited so long to tell them.
He's my brother.
He says he didn't say anything at first because it was his brother, but now he's afraid for his and his children's safety.
This, of course, is a huge development in the case.
Do you know where your brother is?
He's at his girlfriend's house.
We're gonna need an address.
Darren tells police that Dewan has been staying with his girlfriend and gives them the address. They go to the house. Police think they're about to get their suspect.
Is Mr. Poe on the premises right now?
He's nowhere to be found.
They make contact with the girlfriend at location, and in short order, she gives them a consent to search.
Go ahead, guys.
They scour the apartment, and between two mattresses, they find a .380 semi-automatic pistol.
Detective.
The gun is the same caliber as the bullet recovered from Kenyate's body.
I have a gun.
Police are hot on his trail, and he's nice enough to leave a murder weapon right there, you know, where he laid his head.
At this point in the investigations, the detectives have a motive. They have the weapon. They just need to find the suspect.
But just when it appears they are on the verge of solving the case, detectives get a tip that changes everything.
It's definitely an onion where layers are being peeled back. What are we going to find out now about this case?
Kenyate Collier Brewer, a beautiful mother of 3, was discovered dead, stuffed in the trunk of her car. The crime itself was shocking enough. But investigators were even more surprised to learn that Kenyate's husband, Darren, was having an affair with another man. But during his interrogation, Darren named his own brother, Dewan Poe, as the killer.
When Darren comes forward and points the finger at his brother, this is a huge development in the case. The murder suspect has landed in their laps, and it changes the whole course of the investigation.
Darren says he thinks Dewan killed her to keep her quiet about an alleged rape Dewan committed against Kenyate.
The motivation came along with the fear that Kenyate might accuse him of rape.
A search of Dewan's girlfriend's apartment turns up the murder weapon. All detectives need to do now is find Dewan Poe. Police fan out in search of Dewan and soon hit pay dirt. A local gas station attendant claims he may know something about the case.
In police work, there is no bad lead. Some may be a dead end, some may turn out to be actually good.
Police drive to the south side of Chicago, more than 15 miles away from where Kenyate was discovered. At the gas station, an employee describes an incident that took place the night Kenyate disappeared.
The other night, I'm working the register.
The gas station attendant tells detectives that when he was working Sunday night, he heard a woman scream.
So I look outside and I see a couple standing there.
And there was another man wearing a mask that looked like he had a gun.
So he puts the man in the driver's seat and the woman in the passenger seat.
Get in the car and drive!
And then he himself gets in the vehicle and they speed away.
The attendant tells police he reported the incident, but detectives will need more information in order to determine if it was connected to Kenyate's murder.
Did you see what color the car was?
It was blue.
Kenyate's car was indeed blue, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was the one used in the carjacking witnessed by the attendant.
You have camera surveillance here too, right?
Yeah, I've got them everywhere.
If you don't care, could we have a look at that?
Hey, sure, come on back.
It was private surveillance video that really showed everything.
Specifically, the video shows Darren and Kenyate at the gas station together.
Detectives watch the video and see Darren and Kenyatte pull into the gas station.
That shows the vehicle that Kenyatte was later discovered murdered in.
The video also shows Darren and Kenyatte's children sitting in the back seat of the car.
Then a masked gunman appears in the footage.
Is it possible Darren and Kenyatte were carjacked, and that's how Kenyatte ended up dead? Detectives mull this over as they watch the surveillance video. That's when they notice something very peculiar.
What's he doing in the trunk?
Before Darren gets back into the car, he goes to the trunk and rearranges some things around.
Yeah, that's odd.
Can you pause that right there?
Yes, sir. This is the same trunk where Kenyatte's body was found less than 24 hours later. That's suspicious.
The surveillance footage raises a bunch of questions. Why didn't Darren mention the carjacking when he reported Kenyatte missing to the police? Why was he rearranging things in the trunk?
To answer those questions, detectives haul Darren back down to the station and confront him about the surveillance footage.
Darren, you know why you're here.
We saw all the surveillance at the gas station.
He basically, at that point, identifies his brother, Dewan Poe, as in fact the person that carjacked him.
What happened next?
He left for Kenyatte. I didn't know he was gonna do anything like this.
Why didn't you tell us this before?
I didn't want my brother to go to prison.
Darren says that he didn't mention the carjacking initially because he was trying to protect his brother.
To detectives, Darren's news story doesn't ring entirely true.
Darren's claim that he kept the carjacking from the police to protect his brother just doesn't add up. Because again, why is he moving stuff around in the trunk?
Why he would let this happen, just get out of the car and let Dewan go off without calling anybody. It just didn't seem to make any sense.
I'm not buying it. Stand up.
Convinced that he and brother Dewan conspired to murder Kenyatte, detectives placed Darren under arrest. Shortly after that, Dewan gets wind of his brother's arrest and turns himself in.
He knew they were coming for him.
Darren and Dewan are charged with first-degree murder. Kenyatte's family is stunned. They can't believe Darren was involved.
Darren was pretending to be such a wonderful husband, but it was just all fake. It was fake, it was phony, it was staged.
But what exactly was Darren's motive for murdering Kenyatte? Protecting his brother? Keeping his homosexual affair under wraps? Or something else? As Darren and Dewan's trial plays out, it becomes evident that the motive in this case was even more heinous than anyone ever imagined.
It could have been a film. It could have been either a B movie or it could have been an Oscar award-winning film. The details were just so ridiculous.
In June 2013, almost 4 years after Kenyatte Collier Brewer was brutally murdered, the trial begins for her accused killers, her husband, Darren Brewer, and his brother, Dewan Poe.
We were really anticipating the trial, wanting to just get through it, get it over with, so that they can pay for what they've done.
In an unusual move, the state decides the two brothers will be tried together, though they will be represented by separate legal counsel. And when their respective attorneys deliver their opening statements, it becomes clear the brothers are willing to throw each other under the bus in order to save their own skin.
It kind of became a brother against brother situation. The defense attorneys each kind of blamed the other's client. Dewan Poe's attorney said he had nothing to do with it. It was all Darren Brewer's plan. Darren Brewer's attorney said he was in denial. He didn't know what was going to happen when Dewan and Kenyatte drove away in that car.
But there's one thing Dewan and Darren's attorneys can agree on. The dueling versions of the crime indicate there's enough reasonable doubt to acquit both men on all charges.
The defense attorneys for Darren Brewer and Dewan Poe said the evidence was lacking.
Prosecutors countered that the brothers conspired to murder Kenyatte and concocted the fake carjacking as a ruse to mask their involvement in the crime. Only after the surveillance video implicated both of them in the crime did the brothers turn on each other.
There seemed to be this faithfulness where Dewan would try and go do this for his brother. Then once they're in the courtroom, they're turning on each other.
As for motive, prosecutors claim Darren would go to any length, including murder, to keep his superiors at the National Guard from learning about his secret gay life.
Darren had an image to maintain, especially with the military. If they would have learned that he was gay, it may have jeopardized his career.
But prosecutors argue Darren's motive had a financial angle as well.
Apparently there was an insurance policy. It was initially $50,000 that had recently been increased.
At the time of the murder, Darren had life insurance policies on Kenyete totaling more than $150,000. Policies, prosecutors say, would be worthless in the event of a divorce.
If the marriage ended, the life insurance policies could go away.
Darren has reached a point of no return. He's maybe feeling some sense of desperation. I've got this relationship with this fellow that I want to continue. It probably had him at a point where he's like, my wife, Kenyete, has got to die.
So now he needs to move quickly. So Darren and his brother plotted together to kill her and that they would split this money.
There's an additional reason.
According to prosecutors, in Dewan's case, the insurance money is only half the motive.
To prevent her from making a rape allegation against one of these defendants.
Not only do we have Darren trying to cash in on a life insurance policy, we also have the two brothers trying to silence Kenyete about the rape. There aren't very many cases where you have two motives.
Ladies and gentlemen, allegations and suppositions do not a case make.
Darren's defense attorney calls the state's theory preposterous and argues that brother Dewan acted alone when he murdered Kenyete.
Dewan cold-bloodedly and with malice took the life of Kenyete.
They said that it was Dewan Poe who was the actual trigger man. He's the one who stood over Kenyete and fired 2 messengers of death into her head.
It's an allegation Dewan's defense attorney has difficulty refuting, given police had recovered the murder weapon from underneath his bed. But if that was the case, why hadn't Darren tried to stop his brother from murdering Kenyete? Darren's defense attorney argues it's because Darren thought Dewan was just going to scare Kenyete into keeping quiet about the rape allegations, and had no idea his brother intended to kill her.
That night when Dewan carjacked Darren and Kenyete and the kids, Darren's attorney said that he believed that they were just going to have a conversation, that Dewan and Kenyete were going to sit in the car and talk and figure out how to handle what had happened between them.
But prosecutors assert Darren knew exactly what was about to transpire that evening. And to back up their assertion, they call the defendant's cousin, Taryn Webb, to the stand to testify.
Taryn, do I understand you overheard a conversation between these two brothers?
Yes, sir. Well, there was a first attempt. They wanted to go over to her house and strangle her and make it look like a robbery gone bad.
The initial plan is that Dewan Poe is going to kill the wife and make it look like maybe an apparent robbery gone bad.
And what happened after that?
I guess he went and got sidetracked, and he didn't end up killing her. He ended up having sex with her.
When he went to do it, he saw her coming out of the bathroom and became aroused, and they had sex.
It's very striking to me that he went to the home to supposedly to strangle her, but had sex with her. There's something very twisted and psychotic about that.
Taryn says this was the alleged rape Kenyete told Darren about.
So now Dewan and Darren come up with a plan that they definitely have to get rid of her. They need the life insurance money. They can't have this rape allegation out there. Darren has another lover. They must do something. They then devise a plan to do a carjacking.
Following Taryn's chilling testimony, prosecutors paint a picture of what happened next. After Kenyete finished work on the evening of October 25th, she picked up Darren and the kids and asked him to drive home because she was tired after her long shift.
He got off of the Dan Ryan Expressway on the south side of the city. And he didn't go to just the first gas station off the expressway. He went several blocks west, and that's where it all seemed to begin.
Hey, get in the car! Get in the driver's seat now! Get in the front seat!
With Darren and Kenyate's children looking on, a masked Dewan played out the fake carjacking to an unwitting Kenyate. After leaving the gas station, Darren pulled into a dimly lit alley not far from their home in Logan Square.
Shut the hell up and get in the trunk.
Whatever you do, do not hurt me.
Dewan orders her into the trunk.
Shut up before I kill you.
Darren ends up being dropped off with the kids, and then Dewan drives off with her in the trunk. He doesn't go very far before the car is discovered in very close proximity to their residence up on the north side.
According to prosecutors, unaware that she knew her abductor, a frightened Kenyate begged for mercy.
No, please don't.
But Dewan showed none.
He ends up cold-bloodedly killing her.
It's a gruesome account, but it's also complicated and could make the jury's job difficult. Dewan pulled the trigger, but was Darren the crime's real mastermind?
I feel that Darren lured his brother in with the money. And to me, it's like this is something that he had premeditated.
And of course, in Dewan Poe's instance, obviously he was looking to have a financial gain, and now he's secondarily motivated by the fact that there's a possibility that he's gonna be arrested with her outcry of this rape that he's saying was consensual.
Between the multiple motives and conflicting accounts, it seems like the road to a guilty verdict is a bumpy one. But prosecutors still have one card left to play. And for these two alleged murderers, it will mean the difference between a life of freedom or one behind bars.
There was a good sense that the other shoe was going to drop at some point.
The trial of brothers Darren Brewer and Dewan Poe has revealed a bizarre plot that prosecutors claim culminated with the murder of Darren's wife, Kenyate Collier Brewer.
You got this guy that's known his wife his whole life, but all along he's got this secret life that he's trying to hide from her.
The news that Darren was gay and had relationships, and the fact that the brother was supposed to have strangled his sister-in-law and then wound up having sex with her.
There were just all of these layers to this. The failed attempt to kill her the first time in the carjacking. How cold it seemed to be driving the car with your wife in the trunk and your kids right there, and then just to walk away.
But with each brother pointing the finger at the other, is it possible they both could walk?
Despite all of the loyalty that had allegedly been shown between the two brothers, the one carrying out this plan for the other, the one trying to protect the other against the rape allegation, that all ended in the courtroom.
Despite all of the back and forth, prosecutors have an ace up their sleeve, one they've been holding since the day the two brothers were arrested.
Darren confessed on videotape.
It's damning evidence. There's nothing more powerful than a confession.
Prosecutors contend Darren's confession is proof their theory about the crime is legit. And after closing arguments, the jury begins to deliberate. Kenyate's family hopes they'll deliver some measure of justice.
When someone does something like this, you want them to be punished. And that's what we wanted. We wanted them to be punished.
After several hours of deliberation, the jury announces it's reached verdicts for both Darren and Dewan.
The verdict on both of the brothers was guilty. Darren was sentenced to 99 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, and his brother, Dewan, received life sentence plus 21 years.
It was a relief. They got what they deserved. You act like an animal, then you need to be treated like one.
Although Kenyate's family feels vindicated, the verdicts can't fill the void created by her death or the pain brought by Darren and Dewan's cold-blooded actions motivated by secrets, greed, and double lives.
It's like somebody has like really ripped your heart right out of your chest. You know, no anesthesia, just in and out. Just clawed your heart out of your chest.
We're looking at two young men who clearly have some severe sociopathy within them. At best, she ran into some bad characters. At worst, she walked into a setup.
What should have been a promising future for a young soldier in the Illinois National Guard and his nurse wife and their 3 lovely children, and now these kids are gonna have a life without a father and without a mother.
You know, we have to tell them about her smile. We have to tell them how bright she was, that she loved you guys. And that it wasn't her choice to not be your mom anymore. He took that, just snatched away.
The Trotter Chronicles, From Gold to Grit, a novelization by Gemini. Prologue, The Man in the Sharp Suit. The air in the office was thick with the scent of expensive mahogany and the faint, clinical aroma of high-end air purifiers. Justin, a man whose skin looked like it had been buffed by a professional at a Swiss spa, leaned back in his leather chair. He adjusted his glasses, looking at the 2 men sitting across from him. One of them, Derek Delboy Trotter, was a man who looked like he belonged in a very different kind of office one, with a calendar of a local garage on the wall and the lingering smell of cigar smoke and hopeful desperation. Del was dressed in what he considered his business best, a suit that shimmered just a bit too much under the fluorescent lights, and enough gold jewelry to make a pirate blush. Next to him sat Rodney, younger, leaner, and perpetually looking like he had just realized he'd left the oven on at home. Rodney was sweating, not the confident sweat of an athlete, but the cold, clammy moisture of a man who knew his brother was about to say something that would embarrass them both for the next century. "I've got all the basic details about your business career," Justin began, his voice smooth and devoid of any Peckham grit. "But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you, how you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre." Del Boy's eyes lit up. He didn't know what a raison d'etre was, but it sounded French, and in Del's world, French meant class. "Oh, no," Del whispered to Rodney, "Laboratory Garney." Rodney closed his eyes and prayed for the floor to open. "It's not Laboratory Garney. Del," he hissed, "he's asking for our reason for being." "Exactly what I said. Prove," Del snapped back, before turning to Justin with a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo and then charge him for the delivery. "Well, Justin, where shall I start? Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living. Well, very ordinary lives, weren't we, Rodney? And so the story began. A story of a watch found in a garage, a fortune made in an instant, and a fall so spectacular it made the Hindenburg look like a minor fender bender. Chapter 1, The Caribbean Dream. The sun over Barbados didn't just shine, it announced itself. It turned the turquoise water into a sheet of diamonds and the white sand into something so bright it hurt to look at without designer sunglasses, which, of course, the Trotters were wearing. Only a few months prior, the Trotters had been living in a council flat in Peckham, wondering if the hooky VCers they were selling would last through the first reel of Rambo. Then came the watch, an 18th century Harrison marine chronometer hidden in their garage for decades. It had sold at Sotheby's for £6.5 million. In an instant, Derek Trotter, the man who once sold one-legged turkeys at Christmas, was a multimillionaire. Look at this, Rodney, Dell had said, leaning over the balcony of their private villa. He was holding a glass of something blue with a miniature umbrella in it. Total luxury. This is what we were born for. Mange tout, Rodney, mange tout. Rodney was sitting in a hammock, trying to read a book on sociology, but failing because Cassandra kept applying sun cream to his back. It's a bit much, isn't it, Dell? I mean, 6 months ago we were sharing a bathroom with a leak that Uncle Albert called characterful. Characterful. It was a health hazard. Dell laughed. But look at us now. We've divvied the dosh up. We made sure Uncle Albert got a nice little drink, figuratively speaking, though knowing him, he's probably literally drinking most of it down on the coast with Elsie Partridge. They had been the kings of the island. They donated to charity mostly because Dell liked the gala dinners, and they invested. Oh, how they invested. Dell had met a man in a bar. A visionary, Dell called him. A con artist, Rodney had countered. The man spoke of Central American markets, of vibrant ventures, and emerging economies. He spoke of turning millions into billions. It was a royal mint. Rodney, Dell shouted into the tropical wind. We were making money while we slept. But the Caribbean sun has a way of blinding you to the clouds on the horizon. Chapter 2. The Sound of the Crash. The end didn't come with a bang. It came with a phone call and a decline message on a credit card at a 5-star hotel. What do you mean? Insufficient funds. Dell had barked at the hotel manager, his gold rings clacking against the marble countertop. Do you know who I am? I'm Derek Trotter. I've got more money than the Sultan of Brunei's paperboy. The manager was polite but firm. The Central American market hadn't just dipped, it had evaporated. A coup, a currency collapse, and a series of creative accounting errors by their visionary friend had turned the Trotter fortune into a pile of worthless digital ash. Rodney, Dell whispered, his face turning a shade of gray that matched the London fog they had tried so hard to escape. The negotiations. They've collapsed. Collapsed. Rodney felt his stomach drop. Dell, we put everything into that venture. The houses, the stocks, the peacocks. I know, Dell said, his bravado finally cracking. We've even paid for this hotel on a credit card. A credit card which has now been withdrawn. The journey back to the UK was a blur of cramped airplane seats and the crushing realization that the dream was over. They weren't returning to a hero's welcome. They were returning to a financial wilderness. And it wasn't just them. Back in Peckham, the ripples of their failure were turning into waves. Michael Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head and a man who had trusted Dell with his life savings, was now behind bars. He had remortgaged the pub to follow the Trotter gold mine, and when it collapsed, he had tried to recoup the losses by embezzling from the brewery. He was a desperate man, and Dell felt the weight of every brick in Mike's prison cell. Chapter 3, The Court of Peckham. The corridors of the courthouse felt like a tomb. Denzel, a man whose nerves were usually held together by habit and hope, was pacing so fast he was nearly burning a hole in the linoleum. Denzel, sit down, Albert's voice echoed. Denzel stopped and looked at the group gathered. There was Trigger, looking as vacant as a Sunday morning in a library. There was Boyke, looking smug despite the circumstances. And there was Sid, the cafe owner, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I can't, Albert, Denzel groaned. I've never been a character witness before. I'm worried. I think Dole's made a terrible mistake. Having us for here, it's like inviting the Manson family to dinner. Don't be so dramatic, Trigger said, staring at a fly on the wall. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. Trigger, you're not the one on trial, Denzel hissed. I know, Trigger replied simply, but I still hear voices. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was even grimmer. The Inland Revenue was a beast that didn't care about mange tout or lovely jubbly. They wanted their pound of flesh, and they wanted it in sterling. Dell and Rodney stood before the judge. The properties were gone. The cars were gone. The peacocks had probably been repossessed by a very confused bailiff. Are there any mitigating circumstances? Their lawyer asked. Dell stepped forward, adjusting his tie. Oh, yes, you must remember to tell them that we were slaves to detail, wouldn't you? Rodney, we made certain that we always got our checks off to the Inland Revenue on time. Always, Rodney added, his voice cracking. Fair dues, Dell whispered as the judge looked down at them. They bounced, but they was always on time. The verdict was swift. Bankruptcy. They weren't going to prison, not yet, but they were being stripped of everything. The debt stood at $48,750 for pounds. It was a number that haunted those dreams. It wasn't just money, it was the price of his pride. Chapter 4, The Wrong Gentleman. Amidst the financial ruins, a personal tragedy struck. Uncle Albert, the man who had survived the Battle of the Atlantic only to be nearly killed by those cooking 1,000 times, had passed away. The funeral was a somber affair, or it should have been. The Trotters arrived at the cemetery faces long and hearts heavy. I feel bad. You know, Dell whispered to Rodney as they walked toward the open grave, leaving him here on his own while we was all off globe-trotting. He wasn't on his own, Dell, Rodney said. He had Elsie. He was happy. They stood by the grave, listening to the vicar speak of a man named Bunny who had served in the RAF. Bunny, Dell frowned. Why did he call him Bunny? Well, that's what they called him in the RAF, didn't they? A stranger next to them whispered, because his surname was Warren. Dell froze. He looked at the headstone. He looked at the grieving widow, who was definitely not Elsie Partridge. He looked at the photo of the deceased man who looked remarkably like Albert, but was missing the signature during the war beard. Rodney, Dell hissed, his eyes wide. Is that a Spitfire on the coffin? Yeah, Rodney whispered back. We're at the wrong funeral. They retreated with the quiet dignity of two men who had just realized they were mourning a complete stranger. It was the perfect metaphor for their lives, showing up with good intentions, only to realize they were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong dead relative. Chapter 5, New Management. Back at Nelson Mandela House, the flat felt smaller than it used to. The wallpaper was peeling, and the ghost of their millionaire lifestyle lingered in the form of a single, half-empty bottle of expensive cognac. The firm's been liquidated, Rodney said, staring at the kitchen table. Trotter's Independent Traders is no more. It's Capit. No, 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 Dell said, his mind racing. The firm can go on trading. It's just that I've been disqualified from running it. That doesn't mean to say I can't work for it. He looked at Rodney, really looked at him. We need a new managing director, Dell mused. Someone young, someone enthusiastic, someone full of ideas. Rodney looked around the room. Who? The window cleaner. No, Rodney, you. Rodney's jaw dropped. Me? Dell, I can't run a company. I can't even run a bath without getting a headache. Legally, there is nothing to stop you, Dell insisted. You're clean. No bankruptcy, no disqualification. You'd be the boss. Rodney Trotter, managing director. And so, the power dynamic shifted. Within days, the local paper carried a small advertisement, Trotter's Independent Traders, now under new management. Managing Director, Rodney Trotter. Rodney took to the role with a terrifying level of seriousness. He started wearing a tie at breakfast. He spoke about executive stress and logistical paradigms. He even tried to listen to Mozart to unwind. Mozart's Symphony No. 38 in D major. Rodney explained to Trigger one evening in the flat. I find it helps me ease my executive stress. Trigger nodded slowly. Ain't there no words to this, Dave? No, Trigger, it's instrumental. Dell watched his brother with a mix of pride and annoyance. He was back in the game, even if he was technically just the staff. But the debt to the taxman still loomed. They needed a big score. They needed a miracle. And then the phone rang. Chapter 6, The Gold Rush. The studio lights were blinding. Jonathan Ross, a man who seemed to be made of charisma and expensive hair products, smiled at the camera. Welcome to Gold Rush, he announced, the fastest game show on TV. This is the show where you can win anything from £1 to 100,000 pounds. In the contestant's seat sat Derek Trotter. He had lied about his hobbies, claiming to love 16th century Italian Renaissance art instead of seeing what fell off the back of a lorry. And he had navigated the early rounds with the cunning of a street fox. He reached the final stages. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knockoff Swiss Army knife. For 50,000 pounds, Derek Jonathan Ross said, leaning in, which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and the Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Del felt the sweat prickling under his shimmery suit. He knew this, or he thought he knew it, but his brain was a jumble of French phrases and Peckham market prices. I'm going to have to use me old SOS, aren't I? Del said, his voice trembling. I'll call my brother, Rodney. Back at the flat, Rodney and Cassandra were dressed in their fantasy therapy outfits, Rodney as a gladiator and Cassandra as a police officer. It was supposed to be a quiet night of memory baggage unloading. The phone screamed. Hello, Rodney snapped, assuming it was their annoying neighbor, Mickey Pierce. Piss off, Mickey, you're getting on my tits now. Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross. The silence that followed was deafening. Rodney realized he had just told one of the most famous men in Britain to piss off. Rodney, we need your help, Jonathan said, hurried. Derek is on 25,000. Going for 50. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and the Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Rodney didn't hesitate. He had to GCEs. He had been listening to Mozart for a week. He was an executive. Ravel, Rodney said with absolute certainty. 100%. Del, it's Ravel. Del turned back to the camera, his chest puffed out. I'll go with that, Jonathan. It's Ravel. Jonathan Ross looked at him with a face full of pity. Derek, that was the wrong answer. It was Rodrigo. The world seemed to stop spinning. Del's face went through every shade of red known to man. He had lost it all. Again. On national television. Chapter 7, The Phoenix of Peckham. The silence in the flat that night was heavy. Del sat on the sofa, still wearing his game show suit, staring at the floor. Raquel was in the kitchen, and Rodney was hiding in his room, probably trying to find a way to dismantle his gladiator armor without making a sound. The phone rang. If that's Mickey Pierce, Del growled, picking it up. I'm going to murder him. Hello, is this Derek Trotter? A voice asked. It sounded professional. This is the producer of Gold Rush. Del rolled his eyes. Oh, Give it a rest. Mickey, I can hear the jukebox in the Nag's Head from here. No, Mr. Trotter, this is serious. We've made a mistake. Our researchers checked the facts. Ravel did write the music for the child and the enchantment. Even though he's a composer and not primarily a guitarist, the question was flawed. Dell sat up straight. A mistake. You mean I was right? You were right. We're offering you the 50,000 pounds. Or the chance to come back and play for the 100,000. Dell looked at the room. He looked at Rodney, who had peeked his head out of the bedroom door. He looked at Raquel, who was standing in the doorway with hope in her eyes. Give all the money to charity, Dell shouted into the phone, his old bravado returning in a rush of adrenaline. And if you phone here once again, I'm going to come down there and kick your arse into shredded duck. Goodbye. He slammed the phone down. Dell, Rodney screamed. What are you doing? That was 50 grand. Dell started to laugh. A deep, wheezing Peckham laugh. It was Mickey Pierce, Rodney. I could hear the jukebox. He thought he could wind me up, but nobody winds up Derek Trotter. He stood up, adjusting his cuffs. We're the Trotters, Rodney. We don't need charity. We're back in business. New management, new ideas. This time next year. Rodney sighed, but he couldn't help but smile. We'll be millionaires? No, Dell said, throwing an arm around his brother's shoulder. This time next year, we'll be debt free. And that, Rodney, is bonjour. It's bonjour, Dell, Rodney corrected. Exactly what I said. Prove exactly what I said. The neon sign of the Nag's Head flickered in the distance, a beacon of hope in the heart of Peckham. The Trotters were down, but they were never out. Because as long as there was a deal to be made and a brother to blame, the dream would never die. Chapter 8. The Cold Light of Day. The following morning did not bring the clarity Del Boy had hoped for. Instead, it brought a pounding headache and the lingering suspicion that he might have made a catastrophic tactical error. He sat at the formica table in the kitchen, nursing a mug of tea that was mostly sugar. Rodney stumbled in, looking disheveled. Del, Rodney said, his voice flat. I've been thinking about that phone call last night. Forget it, Rodney. Dell snapped. Mickey Pierce, professional wind-up merchant, probably recorded the whole thing to play at the pub later. Low D toilet. Rodney. Water under the bridge. Dell, I went to the pub this morning to get some milk because the fridge is on the blink again. And Mickey Pierce was there. He looked as miserable as a rainy Tuesday in Margate. Apparently, his latest business venture selling laser-cut toast just failed. He didn't even have enough credit on his phone to make a prank call. Del froze, his mug halfway to his lips. What? And there's more. Sid showed me the morning paper. There's a small headline on page 12. Game show blunder. BBC apologizes to Peckham contestant over classical music gaffe. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. You could hear the distant rumble of the 171 bus and the slow, rhythmic dripping of the leaky tap. So, Del whispered, his voice barely audible. It wasn't Nicky. It was the producer, Del. You told the BBC to give £50,000 to charity in the name of the Trotters. Del Boy put his mug down. He stared at the wall, at the framed picture of their mother. Well, he said, his voice suddenly bright and brittle. At least we'll get a plaque. Or a mention in the newsletter. It's tax deductible, ain't it? We don't pay tax. Del, we're bankrupt, Rodney shouted. Details, Rodney, details. Del stood up, pacing the small kitchen. This is just a temporary setback. A minor hiccup in the grand tapestry of Trotter fortunes. We're under new management. Remember, Managing Director Rodney Trotter. What's our first move, boss? Rodney looked at the pile of unpaid bills on the counter. Our first move is to find something to sell. Something that doesn't involve the Sultan of Brunei or the BBC. Chapter 9. The Electronic Revolution. Rodney's first official act as managing director was to meet with Monkey Harris. Monkey was a man who lived up to his name short, agile, and always looking for a way to climb a bit higher on the social ladder. He met Rodney in the back of a van parked behind the Nag's Head. I've got a consignment. Rodney, Monkey whispered, opening a cardboard box. Electronic personal organizers. Top of the range. They tell the time, store 500 names, and have a built-in calculator. They're selling like crazy in the West End. Rodney picked one up. It was a sleek, black plastic device that looked like something from a low-budget sci-fi movie. How much? For you. A tenner apiece. I've got 200 of them. Rodney calculated. 200 at 10 pounds was 2,000. If they sold them for 30, that was for £1,000 profit. It wasn't 50,000, but it was a start. I'll take them, Rodney said, trying to sound executive. But I'll need to pay in installments. Cash flow. You understand? Monkey nodded. I understand. Cash flow is the soul of business. I'll drop them off at Nelson Mandela House tonight. When Rodney returned to the flat, he found Del Boy trying to fix the washing machine with a bent coat hanger. Good news, Del. I've secured our first inventory. Electronic personal organizers. The future of business. We're going to modernize Peckham. One address book at a time. Del looked at the device. Electronic organizers. People round here can barely organize a trip to the toilet. Rodney, who's going to buy these? Everyone. Busy professionals, students, anyone who needs to stay on top of their game. It's executive stress management. Del, der chic. HMM, Del said, his eyes narrowing. They look a bit plastic. Are they waterproof? Why would they need to be waterproof? In case it rains on the market stall. Rodney, think of Voyage Pois. Chapter 10. Iconoclastic Autosuggestion. While the business world was being revolutionized by plastic organizers, the domestic world of the Trotters was entering the realm of fantasy therapy. Cassandra had insisted, after the stress of the bankruptcy and the game show disaster, she felt their relationship needed a reboot. She had found a book by an American psychologist who spoke of memory baggage and the need to create our own make-believe world. Iconoclastic autosuggestion. Rodney explained to Del Boy while they were sorting the organizers. It's about rejecting reality and becoming different people, just for an evening. Sounds like what I've been doing for 40 years. Rodney, Del quipped. What's the catch? We write down our fantasy figures, and then we become them. No dressing up. It's all in the mind. But as with everything in the Trotter household, the no dressing up rule was the first to go. Thursday night arrived. Del had agreed to take Raquel and Damien out to see a film, giving Rodney and Cassandra the flat to themselves. Or so Rodney thought. I'm taking them to see that new cartoon, Del said, adjusting his coat. The one about the singing fish. We'll be back late. Enjoy your autosuggestion. Rodney waited until the door closed. He went to his bedroom and emerged 10 minutes later wearing a leather skirt, a plastic chest plate, and sandals. He looked like he had been rejected from a high school production of Spartacus. Cassandra emerged from the bathroom. She was wearing a police uniform, complete with a hat and a plastic truncheon. Rodney, she gasped. I thought we said no dressing up. I couldn't help it. Cass, the book said to fully immerse yourself. I'm Russell Crowe in Gladiator. And I'm a detective from the Bill. Cassandra sighed. You look different. Strength and honor, Cassandra, Rodney said, striking a pose that nearly caused his chest plate to pop off. Now, let us unload our baggage. They sat on the sofa, trying to be reborn. But the atmosphere was somewhat dampened by the smell of Dill's lingering cigar smoke and the faint sound of the neighbor's heavy metal music. So, Rodney began, trying to deepen his voice. On my signal, unleash the feelings. Rodney, I don't feel like a detective. I feel like an idiot. That's just the memory baggage talking. Rejected. You are an officer of the law. I am a hero of Rome. Suddenly, the front door burst open. We're back, Del Boy shouted, stumbling in with Raquel and Damien. The cinema was full. Apparently, every kid in Peckham wants to see a singing fish. He stopped dead. He looked at Rodney. He looked at Cassandra. Oh, my God, Del whispered, his eyes widening. Rodney, what have you done to her? Is she arresting you? It's therapy, Del, Rodney hissed, trying to hide behind a cushion. Go away. Therapy, you look like you're about to fight a lion in a police station. Dell started to laugh. A deep, wheezing sound. Raquel, come and see this. Russell Crowe and the Bill are having a meeting in our front room. The fantasy was officially over. Reality hadn't just returned, it had kicked the door down and started laughing at them. Chapter 11, The Sultan's Shadow. A few days later, the executive stress was reaching a fever pitch. Marketers in Peckham were apparently resistant to digital organization. Rodney was sitting at the kitchen table, Mozart playing softly in the background, when the phone rang. Trotter's Independent Traders, Managing Director Rodney Trotter speaking, he said, trying to sound bored and important. Good evening, a voice said with a thick, exotic accent. I am wishing to speak with Managing Director. Rodney's eyes narrowed. This is he. Who is calling? My name is Asif Hazen. I am representative of Sultan of Brunei. Rodney rolled his eyes. He looked at Delboy, who was pretending to read the paper but was clearly listening. The Sultan of Brunei, Rodney repeated loudly. Well, how can I be of assistance, sir? His Highness has seen your advertisement in the newspaper. He is very impressed with your party planning and consultancy. Is he now? Rodney smirked. And what does His Highness want? Does he want me to fly out and organize a palace warming? Exactly. He wants you to fly to Brunei. All expenses paid. He has bought a crappy old three-wheeled van and he wants to know where to start it on cold mornings. Rodney's smirk vanished. He slammed the phone down. Shove it, Mickey, he yelled at the dead line. Just shove it. What happened? Dell asked, looking up. Dave's just had a big row with the Sultan of Brunei. It was Mickey Pierce. Dell, I could hear the jukebox. He thinks he's so clever, using an accent. But as Rodney sat back down, his Mozart symphony reached a crescendo. He looked at the advertisement he had placed. He had listed consultancy and party planning. It was a professional advert. He looked at the phone. For a fleeting second, he wondered, what if the Sultan of Brunei really did have an old van? What if he really did need a consultant from Peckham? Dell, Rodney whispered, do you think? Don't worry, Rodney, Dell said, patting him on the shoulder. The world's full of surprises. Look at Nicky Piercy's only just learned to read. They sat in the quiet flat to brothers bound by blood, bankruptcy, and a never-ending cycle of nearly and almost. They were back where they started, in Nelson Mandela House, with a mountain of debt and a box of plastic organizers. But as the neon sign of the Nags had flickered outside, Del Boy looked at his brother. This time next year, Rodney, he said, the old spark returning to his eyes. This time next year, we'll have sold all them organizers. We'll be back on top. Mange tout, Rodney, mange tout. And in the heart of Peckham, that was enough. Chapter 12, The Ghost of Mickey Pierce. The weight of the charity call hung over the flat like a thick London fog that refused to lift. Del Boy tried to carry himself with his usual swagger, but every time he passed a television, he felt a phantom pain in his wallet. 50,000 pounds gone with a single, ego-driven outburst. I could have bought a new van. Rodney, Del whispered, staring into his lukewarm tea. A yellow one, with leather seats, and a heater that actually works. You gave it away, Del, Rodney said, not looking up from his latest business management book. You wanted to look like a big man. Well, congratulations. You're the biggest man in the soup kitchen. Rodney was trying to embrace his role as managing director, but the reality of the market stall was far from the corporate boardrooms he envisioned. The electronic organizers were currently sitting in the hallway, taking up space and gathering dust. We need a marketing strategy, Del, Rodney announced, standing up. We can't just stand on a street corner and shout. We need to target the high-end demographic of Peckham. Del snorted. The high-end demographic of Peckham is anyone who's still got all their own teeth. Rodney, just get M down to the market. I'll do the patter. No, I'm the MD. I'll do the patter. You can be the logistics coordinator. The what? Rodney, I've been selling since you were in nappies. I could sell a no-entry sign to a getaway driver. But Rodney was insistent. He wanted to prove he was more than just a bone marrow donor in a cheap suit. He spent the evening practicing his executive voice, much to Raquel's amusement and Dul's irritation. The next morning, the market was bustling. Rodney stood behind the stall, looking stiff and uncomfortable in a trench coat he thought looked professional. Del stood to the side, arms folded, waiting for the inevitable. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, Rodney shouted, his voice cracking slightly. Experience the future of personal management. The Trotter 3000 electronic organizer. Stores 5. 100 names. Calculates. Tells the time in Tokyo. A woman in a headscarf stopped and looked at the black plastic device. Does it tell me when the 171 bus is coming? Well, no, Rodney stammered. But it can store the bus timetable if you type it in. I can't type, she said, moving on. And I don't know anyone in Tokyo. Del Boy stepped forward, unable to restrain himself any longer. Oi, darling, come back. Don't listen to him. He's just the apprentice. Look at this, it's not just an organizer. It's a status symbol. It shows the world you're a person of substance. And look at doubles as a very stylish paperweight for your betting slips. He grabbed one and held it high. Normally 30 quid, but today, because my brother here has just been released from a psychiatric institute, and I'm feeling sorry for him, 15 quid, for 25. Within 10 minutes, Del had sold 3. Rodney watched in a mixture of awe and resentment. The executive dream was slipping away, replaced by the familiar grit of the Peckham hustle. Chapter 13, The Road Sweepers Union. As the weeks dragged on, the organizers sold in drips and drabs. But the mountain of debt to the inland revenue remained immovable. The threat of bailiffs was no longer a distant worry. It was a looming shadow that darkened every conversation. Raquel's right, Del, Rodney said one evening, looking defeated. Trigger said they're recruiting down at the depot. Road sweeping. The pay is steady. Del Boy looked like he had been slapped. Road sweeping. Me, Derek Trotter, the man who once had peacocks on his lawn. I'm a trader, Rodney, an entrepreneur. You're a bankrupt entrepreneur. Del, we need money. Real money. Not this time next year money. Del looked around the flat. He saw the peeling wallpaper, the half-empty bottles, and the tired look in Raquel's eyes. The bravado he had worn like armor for decades was finally starting to rust. I'll help you fill in the form, Rodney offered, his voice softening. Me? Del shouted. I wasn't talking about me. You're the one who needs a job. You're young. You're fit. You can push a broom from here to Lewisham. I'm the managing director. Rodney protested. Exactly. And part of managing a company is diversifying your income streams. Now, go on, get the pen, and see if they've got any vacancies for a logistics consultant with his own high-vis vest. The tension in the flat was broken by a knock at the door. It was Trigger. All right, Dave, Trigger said, nodding to Rodney. It's Rodney, Trigger. Yeah, whatever. Del, I heard you were looking for a bit of work. My supervisor says he's got a spot on the night shift. It's mostly quiet. Just you and the broom. Gives you plenty of time to hear the voices. Del Boy closed his eyes. The image of himself in an orange vest, sweeping up kebab wrappers at 3 a.m., was the final indignity. Thanks, Trig, Del said, his voice surprisingly quiet. I'll think about it. After Trigger left, Del sat by the window, looking out at the estate. He thought about the watch, the millions, the Barbados sun. It all felt like a dream someone else had dreamt. Rodney, Del said, his eyes still fixed on the horizon. Did I really tell them to give that 50 grand to charity? You did. Del, you were brilliant. The whole country thinks you're a saint. Del smiled, a small, sad flick of the lips. A saint with no shoes, eh? Well, at least I'm a saint. Say lavi, Rodney. Say lavi. Chapter 14, The Final Word. The interview with Justin was drawing to a close. The high-end office felt even more alien now that the story had been told. The mahogany desk seemed colder, the air purifiers more sterile. Justin adjusted his glasses, scribbling a final note in his leather-bound notebook. It's a fascinating journey, Mr. Trotter, from the heights of sudden wealth to the current situation. But tell me, do you regret it? the watch, the investment, the charity call. Del Boy leaned forward. The gold on his fingers caught the light. He looked at Rodney, then back at Justin. Regret it, Del said, his voice regaining its familiar resonance. Justin, my son, life is like a market stall. Sometimes you're selling silk, and sometimes you're selling scrap. But the point is, you're always in the game. Rodney shifted in his seat, looking at his brother with a mix of exasperation and pride. We had the world in our hands for a minute, Del continued. And yeah, we dropped it, but we're trotters. We're like those little rubber balls you get in the 50p machines. The harder you hit us against the pavement, the higher we bounce. He stood up, smoothing his shimmering suit. I've got a warehouse full of electronic organizers that are going to revolutionize the world of personal management. I've got a managing director who's got more ideas than a patent office. And I've got a family that, well, they're the only thing that's actually worth $6.5 million. Justin stood up, offering his hand. Thank you, Derek. It's been an insight. I'll be in touch. As they walked out of the office and into the cool London air, Rodney turned to Del. So, what now, MD? Del Boy looked at the yellow Capri parked at the curb. It was old, it was battered, but it was theirs. Now, Rodney, Del said, his eyes sparkling with a new scheme. Now we go to the Nag's Head. I think I know a bloke who's looking for 200 slightly water-damaged electronic organizers. He's a Lap's laptop salesman. And I think he's a fan of Ravel. Rodney sighed, shaking his head. You never learn, do you? Learn? Rodney, my boy, if I learned, I'd be bored. Mange tout, Rodney, mange tout. And as they drove off into the Peckham sunset, the neon sign of the Nag's Head flickered to life, welcoming them back to the only world they truly understood. Chapter 15, The Nag's Head Debrief. The Nag's Head was exactly as they had left it, dimly lit, smelling of stale lager and failed dreams, and populated by the usual suspects. Sid was behind the bar, looking as if he'd personally invented misery, while Trigger sat in his usual corner, nursing a half pint of something that looked like swamp water. Del Boy burst through the doors, his shimmering suit reflecting the flickering neon lights. Behind him, Rodney followed, looking like a man who had just survived a high-stakes interrogation which, in a way, he had. A round for my friends, Sid, Del shouted, slapping a 5-pound note onto the counter. And make 'em large ones. We've just been to the top of the mountain and come back with the view. Sid didn't look up from his glass polishing. The mountain, last I heard, you were at the bottom of a bankruptcy hole. Del, that 5-pound note wouldn't even buy you a ticket out of Peckham. Details, Sid, details. Del laughed, grabbing to brandies. He walked over to Trigger. All right. Trig, you missed it. We just had a meeting with a high-flying biographer. He wanted the inside scoop on the Trotter Empire. Trigger nodded slowly, his eyes vacant. Did he ask about the voices? Del? No. Trig, he didn't. But he was very impressed with our raison d'etre. Your what? Our reason for being, Trig, Rodney intervened, sitting down. Not that Del actually knows what it means. I know exactly what it means, Rodney. Del snapped. It means we're still here, ain't we? Against all the odds. The taxman, the game shows. The Sultan of Brunei, they've all tried to knock us down. But we're like a